Okay. Thank you.
I've
Thank you.
already started the recording. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Rishi. Yeah, thank you so much, Satya, and thank you so much, Product Tank, for hosting me. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Abhijeet, Rishi, and thank you all for joining today. I will take just a few minutes just to quickly introduce about myself and briefly just touch about the topic. Uh, I've been in the product management role for the last 7 years now with a startup called Credit Vidya. Credit Vidya is a fintech startup which is into the business of providing alternate data products to large NBFCs and banks. So we have built products which help lenders to uh, underwrite customers who cannot be underwritten by traditional mechanisms. So we use mobile device data to underwrite customers today. Uh, Along with that, in the last year and a half, we have ventured into lending as well. So we have built a large B2B2C marketplaces where we interact with large lenders to unlock capital, and we have built innovative products and integrated with large marketplaces like Me Credit, Free Charge, and we are already on the verge of talking to few of the larger players like Google, Amazon, and sorry, Google, Amazon, uh, and you have other players like PhonePe and all of these guys. Uh, uh, Before that, I did get my hands dirty on starting two businesses of my own. One into building a marketplace for businesses, social network for businesses, and the other one was a fantasy cricket game. One of them which I ran for a couple of years within my own company that I was working in, and the other one which did not do well and kind of had a follow-up. So that's a brief about myself. Uh, I'll now quickly move on to the presentation and kind of talk about the topic today. Um, yeah, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes. Yes, it's loading. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to start this off from here because this is something which is very common. We all align with it. It's compiled into a Confucius had actually written something about it many decades ago. I mean, many millennials ago, where he said, how does one find a wife? Without a matchmaker, one does not. And all of us can relate to this concept because today, if you are going to do an arranged marriage, or if you're even a love marriage, or even if you're dating someone, there's typically someone that behaves like a matchmaker, and uh, that's where a job of a product manager comes in. And job of a product manager comes in at the time of a product launch. What you would see is that you have to match the right users to your product, and this is where the role of a matchmaking takes place, and which is why it becomes very critical to get that right product market fit to ensure that you are able to maximize your product success. So I thought, I would just start off with something slightly more on the lighter note before we kind of move into the framework. So how does one, maximize a launch success, and how do you kind of bring order in the chaos, right? So you typically think about, I would want to collaborate with my stakeholders. I would want to coordinate the processes. And then you have so many other things that are going on at the same time. How do you ensure that you're able to maximize success? It's not by coordination or collaboration. It's about having the right framework in place. So I want to introduce a framework that we have been using within the company. Uh, it's basically a framework that we have devised internally, and it's more around trying to understand how do you go from bottom to the top and make sure that at every step you're able to carefully define, understand, and make sure that you're able to maximize the success out here. So to give you an example, uh, let's say, just one second. I am not able to see my own presentation because the Zoom thing keeps coming in between. Rishi, this is...
Like, try stop sharing and start sharing again.
Okay, yeah. I have moved it out. I've moved it out. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I so when we were defining the framework, we kind of broke it down into four parts. There's a pre-launch, there's a soft launch, the big back launch, right? The big launch that you're going to do, and then there is a post-launch. Uh, at the pre-launch level, everyone kind of goes through this where you define the problem, you define the features, the benefits, and the monetization strategy. Uh, Now, what is not taken into careful consideration is how you go about doing your soft launches. Uh, and then once you have really nailed down your soft launch, you would then move out into the big bang launch, which is essentially where you would put all the resources, all the money, and all the commitment to ensure that you're able to maximize your launch. But when you are doing that, how do you know that you are able to track the success of it? This is where your acquisition and the commitment matrix come into place. So before we kind of deep dive into this, I want to kind of take a screenshot of this so that we're going to talk about this throughout the presentation, and we will keep coming back to it at the time of workshop as well. So ensuring that you are pretty clear with the framework, you are able to align with the framework and then reutilize it further. You can take time to kind of take a screenshot out here, and then I'll move on to the next slide. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So the question that comes right in everyone's mind is, hey, what does this framework apply to all the different type of launches that we are doing? So let's say, for example, can I use it for launching the first product in my company, like how I was there, right? So when we started off, the company was a startup and we were going to launch the first product in our company. We tried utilizing the framework and it kind of aligned out there. For a consecutive product launch in the company, does it work? Yes, the framework will continue to work. And if you're launching new features in the company, will it continue to work? Yes, it will continue to work. What about the segment? The framework is generic, so it will address all the different type of businesses that exist, whether it's a B2C, a B2B, or a multi-sided marketplaces. So since it's generic, a bit of customization here and there will adapt to your launches that you're going to do for your products. So before we begin, I want to address some of the FAQs. Like I said, is this framework set in stone? No, right? So some of the things will evolve as the market evolves. Like few years ago, online did not exist, and so didn't a prominent multi-sided platform. So this framework is fresh, right? Keeping in mind that a supply side has been introduced, which was not there earlier, primarily because now you have dominated business. You have businesses who are dominating the multi-sided platforms today, right? Even in India, if you're looking at it, all the large businesses are nothing but multi-sided platforms, which are dealing with businesses on one side, which are dealing with consumers on the other side, or you have consumers on one side and consumers on the other side, right? So typically that's how businesses are being run today. Can you add or remove things in the framework? Yes, you can. For specific segments, this may not apply. So for example, for B2C, the supply side does not exist. For a B2B, the supply side would not exist because you are only trying to solve demand by building products for the businesses that you're going to cater to. So for pipeline business, some parts of it will not work and some parts of it will continue to work. When should you start with this? This is a 30,000 feet strategy document, right? So you have to start from day one. As soon as the organization that you're working in or the startup that you're starting off, you really need to get this filled out, similar to how you have your lean business canvas plan, right? So wherein you fill everything before you dive into starting a business. This is similar to that. When you're launching the product or when you're even conceptualizing the product, make sure you have this filled, because you will always go back to this framework and you will make those changes, which will happen over the course of period when your learnings start accumulating over a period of time. Does it cover marketing? Because product launches, everyone thinks that product launches are all about marketing. However, this does not get into specifics because a part of it is marketing, but not entire piece of it, right? Marketing is nothing but utilizing the utilities that are available to push your product into the market. But if you have a framework in place, you will be able to kind of bring all of these things together. So where do you start? I mean, like I said, you have to start right from the bottom by working on the foundation. So I'm going to start off with the pre-launch section. The pre-launch section is where you get all the pieces together, right? Which is basically the whys and the whos and the whats. and what is it that you need to do out there when you are going to enter the things into the framework. You have to define the problem first, and this is your anchor statement for any elevator pitch that you're doing, right? And everyone understands this really well. You need to cover the inefficiencies which have led to loss of time, money, and created a gap in the market. So what are the common problems that you would see in a multi-sided platforms? You would see there are fragmented resources, inefficient markets, and there's a demand and supply gap. And I'm going to give some examples so that you are able to relate some of the things out here. To start off, Paytm, right? When Paytm started back in early 2000s, they saw that there was a problem that existed in the market where uh, there were consumers who wanted to recharge, but they had to go to various shops and get a recharge done. And there used to be massive queues. So if you remember those times in your early 2005, 2006, you had these bunch of shops which used to help you recharge. They used to carry these feature phones, and then you had to kind of recharge out there. You had to tell them, this is my phone number, you need to recharge this amount. And this is where Paytm came into place. They identified that problem. They said that, there's a fragmented recharge space, recharge is exhausting and inefficient because the information does not lie with the consumers. The information is in the power of the operators and the power of the people who are going to recharge for you. So the Dukanwala also ended up spending a lot of time just doing recharges all day. And that would not only lead to inefficiencies for them, but it also lead to inefficiencies for the consumers as well, because you have to wait in a queue to get those recharges done. A similar problem existed in the US market, but in a different industry. We have OpenTable, which started back in 1998, where the booking was insanely difficult to do. And at that time, the problem that OpenTable identified was that the entire restaurant industry was fragmented, and booking tables or dinings were insanely difficult because you had to call each and every restaurant and figure out whether they had space available or not. And that created a gap in the market, because wherever restaurants had excess supply available, the demand would not fulfill that. And wherever the demand was exceeding, there was not sufficient supply. So the distribution of people and the resources were not aligned, and it was not really faring out well. And that's where OpenTable came into place, and they identified that this is a problem that they need to solve for. The second part of the framework, which all of us have worked upon and we continue to do so, we list down in as part of the framework, you have to list down all the features that are necessary. Now, remember, right, when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about writing down all of these things as part of your product proposition that you do all the time, right? These are more directional for launching a product. So the essence of this is that if you have listed these things down as part of your framework, what is going to happen? Your end goal, which is your strategy to launch a product into the market, will be absolutely clear, because everything is going to come from here itself. So second part of it is you list down your features, you list down the benefits. The benefits should obviously be with respect to saving time, cost, you increase the efficiency, you increase revenue, or you increase experience. And at the same time, you identify what will be your monetization channels, right? So whether it's going to be advertisement, your transaction fees, your subscription fees, or your setup fees. Now, what is it that Paytm did, right? When Paytm started off their recharge operating space, they had features and benefits built for the operators and for consumers. So for consumers, they said that, you will have all the recharges for all the operators available on my mobile app. You will also get DTA recharges to be done right from your phone. The benefits is that you'll be able to recharge instantly, right? It will get credited into your account instantly. You don't have to wait for the dukan wale to tell you, हाँ आपके account में recharge हो गया है. It's an instantaneous thing, because I'm also going to take the responsibility of sending you the SMS as well, because I'm deeply tied to the operator. And for every recharge that you're doing, you're going to save 20 minutes of your day. And that's great, right? Because now you no longer have to go down and wait in a queue and go and talk to my dukanwala about it. What is the benefit for the operators? So the benefit for the operators is that I'm able to now unbundle a lot of new products because I have new information about the customers. I'm able to build new products like SMSC and USSD gateways and call management systems. At the same time, I'm able to increase revenue per customer. The reason why I'm giving the customers the visibility for recharges that are otherwise not visible to them when they're going to the dukanwalas. And they're also giving the benefits of giving more insights about customers' profile information. The monetization is, putting banners and advertisements on the platform, and at the same time, convenience fees from the operators for every transaction that is being done. Similar thing for OpenTable as well. The features that they had outlined before doing the launch is, you're going to see restaurants in your area. You'll have all the available dining options, and you can book at any slot, any period of time. You can you will get instantaneous booking acceptance, and you'll also receive personalized offers. Similarly, for B2B restaurants, they said that I'm going to give you the table management booking software, and which is going to simplify your booking experience. The benefits for the consumers were that you're able to find the tables and do the reservations by location, date, and time, by party size, and you're going to see real-time availability of it, and you can book instantaneously, right, for absolutely free. However, for restaurants, the benefits were that I'm able to increase your revenue. And because I'm able to increase your revenue, I have to charge you a booking fee. And at the same time, I'm also going to give you an additional insights capability so that you can personalize guest services for the people who are, or the patrons who are coming and visiting your restaurants. So that was the product, right? So once you have listed all of these features, the benefits, and the monetization out, the next thing you need to do is soft launch, and soft launch becomes extremely, extremely important. This is one of the key things that everyone misses out. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, while working in a startup at Credit, we have also missed a lot of soft launches as well, and we have not done a good job out there. I have been part of multiple product failures at Credit Vidya, and like I said, in my businesses that I've done before. I'm sorry, I think there are questions that are coming in.
Yeah, there are questions coming up. Like we can, after soft launch, we can tackle the questions, right?
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So what does it mean by doing a soft launch? So the soft launch is going to allow you to test your assumptions before you kind of go into a proper launch into the market. So the idea is to first understand who the market is and who are you going to go after first, and what is it that you have to do at the time of doing a soft launch. You have to identify the demand and the supply side, right? In case of a multi-sided platform, it's going to be supply, or when you don't have a multi-sided platform and when it's just going to be a pipeline business, you only have a demand side to cater to. Now, how do you do that? You have to determine that your market that you're going to start with. Which essentially means that you identify your target segment by size, by geography, by demographic profile, and by lifestyle. And at the same time, for the supply side, it's going to be the same thing, where you're going to identify by size, by geography, and by demographic profile. Now, this is where this is important, so that you find your anchor population, basically your early adopters, right? And once you have identified those early adopters, you will be able to kind of make improvements and enhancements on your product, find your product positioning, find that product market fit, and then move on to your hard launch. So this part is very critical, so that you don't make those mistakes at the time of hard launch, and you're able to kind of really, really fix all of those issues that you identify during this period. So example for Credit Vidya, when we were starting off our marketplace business, which is our marketplace lending business, what we tried to do is we narrowed down to the segment that we wanted to lend to. So we started off. Yeah.
I think we can take the questions, like there are questions piling up.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
I'll answer Jay's questions. I'll start off with that. What do you mean by multi-sided platform? So a multi-sided platform is essentially where you have two sides working along with each other. So for example, Amazon has consumers on one side and you have your businesses on the other side. Similarly, for Uber, you have consumers who are booking the cab and you have taxis on the other side. An example for the Indian businesses, Google Pay, for example, has consumers on one side and it has the businesses or the payment gateways on the other side. That's what a multi-sided platform is called. Does that answer the question, Jay?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay. Polomi asked that while the values seem clear in retrospect, what are the methods of getting clarity on value proposition while launching. Yeah, so Polemy, this is where I was getting at. The steps and the mechanisms of going about it comes from the approach that you're taking. So the typical approach that I was talking about is to go from bottom to up. Once you have got clarity in all of these things, before going to the big bang launch, you have to make sure that you are able to clearly identify the challenges that were there when you went about doing your soft launches. And soft launch becomes the critical part of your launch. I'll give, like I was giving you an example in case of Credit Vidya, and I'll tell you a example of a product launch that we were trying to do, where we ended up doing a hard launch without actually doing a soft launch properly. Uh, an example is that we were building a product for office verification. So the idea was the problem that we had identified, that office verification at the time of lending, right? If anyone's got a loan or a credit card, Polemy, do you have a credit card or do you have a loan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So great, right? So I'll give you an example. So when you were trying to get out a loan, there was a critical step where they would want to come and meet you in your office or in your house to verify whether you are claiming to work where you're working and you're claiming to stay where you're staying, right? So,
Yeah.
and that cost lenders a lot of money.
Mhm.
And at the same time, there was a lot of fraud that used to happen when people used to claim that they're working somewhere or people used to claim that they have a business out there. So how do you ensure that you're able to reduce the cost and you're able to identify fraud? Now, when we did a soft launch for the first time, what we did is we positioned the product as a fraud product with one of the partners that we were working with. And they said that this product works as a fraud product really well because the fraud team was responsible for solving even the office verification problem. We were clearly not able to identify the person at that time. And when we soft launched it, we thought that the product is going to do well, and we ended up doing the hard launch. At that time, we realized our positioning was completely wrong, primarily because the product was not solving a fraud problem, it was solving an office verification problem. So we spent almost 6 to 9 months trying to make a sale with other large businesses where they clearly could not see the value or the position that we were trying to put across to them. They said that the fraud clearly cannot be measured, the fraud clearly cannot be demonstrated. So, what is the other problem that this product is able to solve? So what we ended up doing, we ended up coming back to this framework. We redefined the problem, we redefined the features, we redefined the benefits, and we redefined the monetization as well. Our earlier monetization was linked to solving a fraud. So when we started off, we said that if I'm able to solve a fraud of a loan for 5 lakh rupees, then I would want some percentage of fee from that. But how do I measure that a specific case was identified as fraud or not? The entire feedback loop was extremely long. So we had to rewire the product and make it into a transactional product where I'm only going to solve for office verification. And we made it into a low value, high volume product where you said that for every check that you're going to do, it was basically an instantaneous check, an API call where we would identify whether the person that who's claiming to work out there is actually working out there or not. And we eliminated the need to send a field agent to go and visit the person to identify whether he's actually working there or not. Does that answer your question, Polemy?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Pratik.
All right. Abhishek, it's quite difficult to explain clearly to both consumers and businesses in the initial days of launch as to what benefits they'll be receiving. It's true. I mean, obviously, that's why we are the product managers, right? So when you have identified the problems, obviously you are going to figure out ways to build features to solve that problem. Now, and I'll tell you from experience that when we started off building the alternate data products into the market, I would say that that's probably one of the most complicated products that we ever ended up building because we were trying to solve a problem that did not exist, which the lenders believed that did not exist, right? So the essence of this was trying to identify or find metrics which actually solve that or which are able to and extrapolate on those metrics really, really well so that you are able to go back to the consumers and to the businesses and really explain them what is the problem that you're solving. So from an example perspective, Credit Vidya was trying to underwrite customers who are mass market customers. So people who are making anywhere between 20,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees. The banks or the NBFCs did not believe that's a market to even look at, because they said that these markets cannot even repay back. These markets cannot, these type of customers would not even repay back. These type of customers would not even have a digital capability, would not even have a phone on them. So we spent a lot of time extracting meaningful data, extracting data from various research reports, backed it up with our own data, and we went to the market and we demonstrated what are the features that will help them underwrite these customers and how much money. And in case of lending, the benefit is typically the money, right? The return on investment. How much return on investment that they will be able to make if they end up using the product. And that's how you're supposed to demonstrate that. And which is why you always have to come back here. What are the list of features that you're building? And in case of Credit Vidya, the list of features was, I'm able to give you transactional data on the customers, which will mimic the bank account statement of the customers. I will be able to give you digital transaction data on the customers, which is basically his behavior on his device. And the benefits that you're going to get is that you're able to underwrite this new segment. It's going to unlock this new segment, and you're able to get a massive return on investment because you will not charge the same interest rate that you will charge a premium customer like us, right? All of us would get a loan anywhere between 11% to 18%, but we are not the risky customers. There are riskier customers who need the loan, but they have no means of getting the loan. So this is where the benefits would come into play. And the monetization strategy differs from businesses to businesses. So in our case, it was per transaction fee that we used to take from the lenders. Abhishek answers your question?
Yeah, true.
Jay, yes, by soft launch, I meant beta launch. I'll move on to Sandeep's question. How do you plan for licensing and monetization for a product? Do you decide yourself or take help from specialists, for example, like Gemalto, Thales, etc.? Sandeep, I will leave these. So it depends on how much money does your organization have to spend into taking consultancies from Gemalto, Thales, etc. For a startup, we are always constrained with money with respect to identifying what should be the possible monetization strategy. So we kind of limit ourselves to picking from what the market feedback is, and at the same time also mimicking some of the businesses that exist in the market. So it entirely varies. It's not necessary that you take it from consultancies. There are enormous amount of various strategies that are available in the market. You can test it out, right? So like I said, and which is why soft launch becomes important, because at that point in time, you will know exactly what's going to work, what's not going to work, which is where you really need to spend enormous amount of time. And typically soft launches or beta launches, they last anywhere between a month to 2 years, depending on how willing your organization is to spend and figure out the key parts of the product. To give you an example, has everyone heard about Superhuman? It's a product that has kind of become a big thing in the Western markets now. It's basically this email, Superhuman email inbox aggregator that kind of, has made everyone crazy because it kind of makes you insanely productive for using emails. Superhuman did not launch for 2 years. They were in soft or they were in beta launch for 2 years, where they were clearly trying to find what are those features, what are those benefits, and what is the monetization strategy that I need to solve for before moving into a big launch. So it completely depends on how your organization takes it and how serious they are about it. If they are willing to wait, depending on after getting clarity that this is the fit that is going to, or this is what the positioning should be, or this is what the product market fit is going to be, after you go through all of these scenarios, that's when you can proceed ahead with the big bang launch. So until then, I would never advise, and I'll tell you only from my mistakes, that we have failed multiple products. I would never advise to kind of go do a big launch unless and until you have got your product market fit really well. And you would only be able to do that if you go through these steps, go through the parts of the framework, and actually nail down each and every part of it. It's a working document, right? Like all the product documents, this is also a working document. You always come back, reflect upon it, and then redo some of the parts, redo some parts of it. Sandeep, does that answer your question?
Sure, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should move on, and we can take the questions at the end of the
All right. Okay. So I will move on to the soft launch. So like I mentioned, the soft launch was identifying the demand and identifying the supply. Supply largely when you have a multi-sided platform. So if anyone is working on a multi-sided platform, this becomes extremely useful because this is where your soft launch becomes important. You really need to know who is it that you want to go after. After you have taken the right feedback from these people, you can then move on to going on to the big launch. In case of Trade Vidya, we partnered with smaller lead generators to get the customers. So, we had really small partners that we started off with, where we tested out and we piloted our product. So we went after the tier 2 to tier 3 customers, income group of 20 to 40,000, age between 25 to 35, mobile first customers and new to credit customers. And from the supply side, we partnered with a small NBFC who was slightly more agile in tech and who was slightly more agile with respect to getting these new type of customers onto their platform. What we learned out there were the various technical challenges, the operational challenges, the business challenges, and credit challenges. After which we decided now is when we actually want to go and do a big launch. So I'll be honest, right? It's taken a year and a half for us to reach there because this is how long a soft launch typically is in a multi-sided platform. It's not that straightforward to do. And for any business for that matter, never ever push for a large campaign unless and until you have really tested out the market, and that becomes extremely critical. It's okay to wait for a year and a half, get that small bunch of users onto your platform, make those users use the platform, give them the opportunity to give you that good feedback, after which you kind of get into the big launch. So I'll recap out here. You need to identify the problems, you need to list down the features, benefits, monetization, and you need to soft launch to a smaller segment of the market. Once you have done all of this, you identify your product market fit and you finalize the positioning. And this is when you kind of make a big jump. There's a poll. Rishi, can you share the poll after this? Yeah. I will move on to the next slide if everyone's answered the poll. So
give it like some seconds, like people are still voting.
All right.
We still have like 7 or 8 participants who to vote yet. 81%. Few more seconds. Two participants left to vote. I'll close it in a few seconds. All right.
Yeah.
97% voted, and wow, we had like 60% audience who was saying that it did not meet the market need.
Okay.
I'll share the results. Can you see that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's good.
Cool.
All right. Okay. So, I understand, right? That the framework is, and I'll just address Monish's question, right? Because it kind of, it's a good question to acknowledge right now. So yes, I call it as a framework primarily because I've given a timeline to it, because in the end, obviously the entire product launch is supposed to be sequential in nature. However, what I've done is I've kind of accumulated all the different big parts of it, so that you have one single working document to work on. And it's like a strategic document that you always can go back and look into it. However, the parts are moving. It's not that straightforward. Like I said, before moving into the big launch, you again have to come back reverse in a reverse chronological order, fill all of the gaps, and then move on to the big launch. Uh, it would have been chronological in nature if it was just going into a single time series, but everyone knows that product launches are never in a single time series. You always have to reflect back and then, take a step back and then go back, go straight all over again. Uh, I will move on to the next one, which is, preparing for the big launch. So once you have tested out and made amendments, you push out your strategy. What are the various ways of doing it? There's a push and pull, the common nomenclatures that are used in the market. And then you have channels where you would do all of these things. What does it mean by push and what does it mean by pull? So push is where you would try to generate demand for a product that either exists or that exists, but it really not catering a lot of demand yet. And that's where you would use either a form of a community communication or you would use a form of a pipeline communication. These are your traditional channels that everyone does today, right? Which is your social media, your forums, and your pipeline communication like your TV, radio, roadshows, or seminars. And in case of pull, you will have various different strategies, especially when you are going to do a multi-sided platform where you would want to influence these customers to come on your platform and to use it. And I'm kind of going to talk about the pull once more because the push is something that everyone really, really understands well. So what does partner with an existing ecosystem mean? It essentially means that you ride on an existing base that is there out. It's out there today. To give you an example, all the major payment gateways today who have become large marketplaces like PhonePe, Paytm, Google, even PayPal in the earlier days have done a piggybacking on large businesses that existed. So for example, uh, Google Pay integrated themselves into all the places, all the e-commerce players. You had Paytm who had integrated to all the e-commerce players. You had uh, PayPal who had integrated with eBay. So wherever a large consumer base exists, you would piggyback with a solution out there and you would ride on that uh, existing consumer base that is there. Seeding. Seeding is a form of a strategy wherein you would initially take the effort of putting those users or creating those users onto the platform so that it attracts other people. Um, to give you an example, YouTube was started like this. When YouTube launched, what they did is they created videos onto the platform and they kind of got friends and families to use the platform and share that on various blogging websites. And eventually they seeded the platform in such a way where people came back to YouTube, realized that you can create content on a platform out here, and then they eventually changed them into content producers. Incentivizing the marquee users. This is very common. Everyone does this. You give cashbacks and coupons to the early adopters so that they take the responsibility of influencing other customers to come in. So they become your evangelist. They would actually go and chase other customers, other people in their community and attract them to use the platform, right? So everyone knows how Paytm started off with cashbacks, how Freecha started with cashbacks, uh, how Google Pay's cashbacks really work really well. Single-sided strategy. An example is OpenTable. An example is Paytm. OpenTable built restaurant booking systems. And what eventually happened is the restaurant guys told the consumers who were calling over phone to book a table to use OpenTable to book or to make a reservation into their restaurants. So that kind of attracted consumers into their platform. Influential strategy is basically identifying key influencers in a community and telling them to use the platform and influence other people to come onto your product. Limited street strategy is everyone knows about cred, how cred started off with the limited seats, where they said that all the customers who had a score
Hold on.
Is there some
Rishi,
sort
can
of
you
echo?
mute?
Yeah, I'm trying to mute.
Is somebody attending two conferences?
I think so. Pratik, you can unmute yourself. Hello?
Okay, yeah, thanks. So what is a limited seat strategy? It's, what Cred did really well, where they said that I will not let users come onto my platform with scores below 750, with credit scores below 750. And that created excitement for the users to now increase your score so that they can get access to the Cred platform because it is a rewarding platform. So that's one way to attract customers onto your platform. Now, none of these are decoupled, right? They are all coupled together. I mean, you cannot just use one of them. You will probably have to venture into multiple of these. But the only way you can do that if you have got all the other steps, right? Now, the channels everyone understands. There are online channels and then there are offline channels. You have social medias where you kind of go to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to talk about your product. You have influencers who will go and use those social media platforms to talk about your product. Communities, you will go and launch it into communities like Product Hunt, forums, Product Tank, right? You would launch a product in Product Tank as well. Traditional communication, you would use email and SMSs, use those communication channels to blast about your product. And offline channels would be your traditional TV, radio, networking events, those large networking events which happen where you would leverage the conferences, exhibitions, and the standard mechanism of sending your fleet on street could be the corporates or to the SMBs that you're doing. Now, how did Paytm do it? Paytm utilized blog. So this is it's just not one thing at a time, right? You're kind of going to do everything because you've already figured out your product market fit, you've figured out your product positioning. Now, this is where you actually put all the resources and time behind it, and you're going to go all out on it. So what did Paytm do? Paytm utilized the blogging network for pushing cashback offers to the users. So there were users who kept going to all of these famous blog pages. They realized that Paytm is giving cashback offers for recharging, so it attracted people to go onto the platform. Paytm also utilized social media to attract users. At the same time, what Paytm did is it partnered with all of these operators and this Dukanwala recharge guys. So what these Dukanwalas did, they started recharging on the Paytm thing. Now, when they did that, Paytm sent a message to you and they said, download this app. And once you downloaded the app, now you knew that you could recharge it yourself and you no longer had to go to the Dukanwala anymore. The second thing is they incentivize the marquee users. Now, this is a common thing, right? So every time we recharge, we get something as a cashback, and that's an incentivized mechanism for me to again go back to the platform and do it, and also tell others about it. So I'll go and refer to a friend and say that, you know what, you get 10 rupees back for every recharge they're going to do, and that's going to bring other users onto your platform. Similarly, OpenTable did something similar in nature. They utilize social media to attract users, and they utilize word of mouth within the community to inform users about the platform. And from the pull side, like I mentioned earlier, they build restaurant solutions, and the restaurant owners force consumers to use the OpenTable platform to do any kind of booking. And they also incentivize the initial users by giving them reward points. So those reward points could be then redeemed into various incentives within the restaurants, right? In the form of a cashback, in the form of some other rewards. And so now that you're done with the launch, right? You've kind of gone through all of this pain. You also need to make sure that you are able to track your launch metrics really, really well. This is where you have to keep a close watch to understand whether your launch is going to be a success or a failure. So you kind of have two things in place. One is you have a look at your acquisition matrix and you have a look at your commitment matrix. With respect to your acquisition matrix, you would want to know how many are getting acquired in a specific time period and what is your unit cost for the acquisition that is going on. You have to try to reduce that unit cost over a period of time, right? So the trends will eventually show that within a given period of time, if you're acquiring customers, whether you are able to reduce that. And that's where your referral strategies and your pull strategies will come in play. Because if your pull strategy is going to do well, your unit metrics is going to come down over a period of time. Your commitment matrix, right? So conversion matrix, in case of, how many are getting converted into a transaction, whether you're able to monetize that base, the quality matrix, which you talk about your NPSs of the customer, the value creation metric, how many referrals or how many new additional users are your existing users getting onto the platform, and your volume matrix. So your typical volume matrix that you would look at is to basically see number of transactions per day, average cost of transactions, average transactions per users. That's what you would want to track and see whether it's going upwards, right? So basically the commitment metric should go upwards, whereas your unit metric should go downwards over a period of time. What is it that Paytm ended up doing? Paytm ended up um, um, having understanding of total installations in a specific time period, and they also started monitoring average cost of installation per day, right? Broken down into various segments. Now you have various segments like by city, by age, and you would define those segments depending on what is it that you are having as part of your onboarding strategy. Uh, Average cost for every first transaction that is done. So I onboard onto the platform, but not necessarily that I transact. So they would want to know what is my cost of getting the customer to transact for the first time. From a commitment matrix, they would want the average recharge size per customer to grow. They don't want it to be 20 rupees every time. They want to see if they can convert this into 20, into 25, 25 into 30, 30 into 35, right? Second is average cost per recharge per day, because you're giving cashbacks. You would want that to reduce over a period of time, because you don't want to continually incentivize, because you are not living with unlimited capital. So eventually, what is it that you want to do? You want to reduce that over a period of time. Average recharge failures per day. This is purely to understand whether the experience metrics are not broken. An incomplete transaction is to understand whether your conversion metrics are not completely broken. So how is that you can make it better? OpenTable did something similar. They saw a number of restaurants per day, number of restaurants acquired in a given time period, cost per restaurant, booking that was done in a given time period. And then they also wanted to see, what is the distribution of restaurant booking per day, percentage of restaurants with number of bookings per day, how many customers were canceling the bookings, and how many restaurants were canceling the bookings, and how many bookings turned out to be incomplete. Now, what are those preventive launch measures that you need to take? So these are all huge topics. I did not dive into this because they are inherent part of the framework. This is something that you will obviously do as part of your effort of launching the product into the market. The idea is that legal and governance should always be consulted at any given stage. Competitors should always be washed out, and technology failure should always be tested out. In case of legal and governance, you should always be early to take legal guidance on your product and consult at every stage of your life cycle. Personal experience, we recently tried to launch a product into the market. We did not get a legal consulting done. And once we did that, the legal team actually prohibited us to launch the market and launch the product into the market officially. And we had to actually stop doing that. Now we're trying to figure out another way to do it. But the current launch could not be done because at the time of product development, we never got the legal consulting done, and we assumed that these are okay to do. Competitors, don't worry about your competitors. It's not a zero-sum business. None of them are. Google was the 21st or the 40th search engine in the market, so you never will have to worry about it. What you have to identify are your differentiators. And this is where your features and benefits will come into play. You only have to make sure that you're tracking them, you identify your differentiators, and you find your space. And that's where the market concept becomes very, very important. Technology failures. This is an obvious thing, making sure that at the time of soft launch, you are fixing all of the necessary technology failures and you're able to identify and fix before big launch, right? So in space of consumer business, you only get probably 1 or 2 chance to get that population attracted. If they find the onboarding experience or the experience on a platform very, very bad, they're never going to come back. It's going to be difficult to get those back. And word of mouth, like everyone knows, it goes like fire. So that won't take a lot of time for your product to fail. So make sure you take care of the technology failures. Now, what are the essentials at the time of launch? Make sure you track your metrics really, really closely. I think that's one of the most important things to do. Watch out for any nefarious activities, like fraudulent activity that are going on your platform, and watch out for early negative feedbacks. Remember that the early negative feedbacks that will come onto the platform is going to hurt you in the long term. So make sure that you're able to correct course and you're able to fix them out. And yeah, that's about it. There are some recommended reads that I closely follow. So I am a strong strong follower of multi-sided platforms. So I read a lot of multi-sided platform books. These are the books that I would strongly recommend if you are interested to venture into it. There is a blog called Strackery, which is written by Ben Thompson that I closely follow. He has developed the concept of aggregation theory, which is strongly propagated for a multi-sided platform. If you would want to understand how Paytm was trying to do an IPO with the prospectus document, that's also available along with the open table as well. If you want to get the gist of the topics that I touched upon with respect to the pull strategy, that document is also available out here. Yeah. I will take questions now. There are a lot of them. Should I start taking questions now?
I think we are running behind the time a little bit. So I think we can go to Arun's presentation and maybe like we can take some of the questions later.
Yeah.
You can pick one question if that's okay, Rishi.
There's an interesting question was asked by Jay. Do you believe the virality of the product should be part of the launch, or it is decoupled from the launch? This is in the context of P2P product.
When you talk about virality of the product, especially in the context of B2B, and I would want Arun to actually touch upon that further once he introduces the B2B product. If the product is enterprisey, then there is nothing called as virality in that. If the product is more catered towards the smaller SMBs or individuals, then yes, it should be part of your hard launch. So Slack's done that really, really well. At the time of soft launch, they kind of got a lot of these users to use the platform. And when they did a big bang launch into the market, they brought in the virality concept because they would pull the other users onto the platform by helping them create their own pages, like the one that we're using for Product Tank today, right? So a Product Tank, if anyone's visited the Slack page, it has got around 10,000 members. So that's pretty much created virality of Slack itself. So they use the community approach where the communities ended up creating Slack, started utilizing Slack, and they brought in other users to use Slack and influenced them to use Slack for their own organization. So that's a very different kind of approach that they had taken.
Thanks, Pratik. That helps. Actually, I meant B2B and B2C, but in Jiffy, I typed B2B only.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
I think in the continuation of that, similar question like asked by Sairi, not similar, but like maybe Arun can talk more about this. The retention and acquisition metrics will change based on B2B or B2C. So Pratik, you can answer that, or like some part of B2C can answer by Arun as well in his next presentation.
Yes, the retention and acquisition matrix will change, which is why the challenge with the framework is, right, the framework obviously cannot address the smaller level of metrics, which is why if you look at the framework, it's always covering topics of it, right? So which is why these are all large topics. Your metrics is going to be dependent on the organization that you're in. So in our case, and for Credit Vidya's case, our conversion metrics were more around, there's a concept of lead to booking. So we used to define lead as someone who would just do a bureau check. We would convert that into a lead. And if a loan is given, then it's a booking that is a conversion metric. It's going to be different for everyone. It's very organization driven. However, if you really have these 4 things in place, you can categorize all your metrics inside them. Not necessarily all of them will apply for your business, but a large part of it will. Um, the other conversion metric for us for our B2B business was uh, what percentage of customers were getting office verified to the total number of users that were getting requested for office verification. That's one of our other conversion metric that we wanted to check. Uh, Now, different, like I mentioned, our B2C conversion metric was different and our B2B conversion metric was different. So it will vary from business to business. However, this needs to be taken largely like those categories that you need to keep and make it relevant more to the business that you are in.
Thank you, Pratik. So I think we're running a little over time.
Yeah.
So maybe we hand it over to Arun. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, so I will stop sharing. Arun, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Arun.
Perfect. So yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Arun. I'm passionate about building enterprise products and taking them to the market. I've been doing this for 7 years now, and I'm excited to share my notes with you today. And yeah, before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for taking out time to hear me out today. And thanks to the Product Tank organizing team for inviting me today. On the Product Tank, presenters with decades of experience have set the bar really high. Yeah, let me see how this goes. Let's get started. All right, so let's just take a quick look at the deck structure. So you know what's coming your way in the next few minutes. I'll first spend a few slides to demonstrate how enterprise products are fundamentally different from B2C products. And then keeping that context in mind, we'll revisit the launch framework. And after that, we'll go through a couple of examples or case studies to see how we implement the product launch framework for enterprise products. Okay, so I am a music lover, and I'm going to talk about B2C products first. Disclaimer up front, I know hardly anything worth knowing about them. Let's kick this off with a simple example, a simple consumer desire.
Can you put it in a presentation mode?
Sure.
Thank you.
Give me a sec. Better?
Yes, thanks.
Perfect. This is a fun slide, isn't it? Looks better in this mode. All right. So we were talking about the love of music and enterprise products, but this is about this slide is about B2C product. When you look at this slide, I want you to deliberately think about who is the decision maker for this music consumption product. Who pays for it? Who can veto the decision, and who experiences the product, and who benefits from the usage of the product. So usually in B2C products, the consumer plays all of these roles, right? All of them. But it's not the same as from B2B perspective. We kind of know that music can have profound effects, right? And sometimes music is used for medicinal purposes. And so there has to be some regulation on top of it. Unlike an OTC medicine, which doesn't require a prescription, other medicines do. So, things can easily go wrong in unregulated markets. And so in B2B, everything depends upon the business model, right? When you think of music as a therapy being delivered to someone, think about those questions again. Who's the decision maker? Who pays for the product? Who can veto the decision? Who experiences the product, and who is benefiting from the usage of the product? As a general rule of thumb, users of B2B products have a higher motivation level as compared to B2C products. And most B2B products are utilitarian in nature. That is, their outcome matters as much as the experience does. Anybody who's been in talks with salespeople probably already knows this. Yeah, once again, I have zero experience in B2C products.
Did we lose Arun?
Seems like, hold on.
All right, let's get back to the B2B side. Deal with.
Arun, I think we lost you for 10 seconds there.
Okay. All right. Okay, I was just saying, let's get back to the B2B side. So we've established that B2B products kind of deal with multiple personas who have their own interrelated equations. And sometimes they deal with all those personas in a single workflow. And so the key question is, who commissions a B2B product? And typically they're commissioned by an individual choice or a network choice or an authority. And I've given an example of each here. A browser is an individual choice, a messaging platform is a network choice, and an expense management system is by authority. And of course, many products fall on the boundary. For example, is Dropbox an individual choice or a network? Who knows? The point of the slide is to elaborate that on this spectrum, if your B2B product is more towards the right, then it is more enterprise-like. It's more enterprise. And this means that more of what I'm about to tell you applies to your product. Having said that, when it comes to really large enterprise customers, the entire spectrum is regulated. For example, in a bank, even product like browsers are bought like enterprise products. In fact, in each of these categories, billions have been made by focusing a product on enterprise needs. Just a couple of pointers around that. Each enterprise customer is unique. Each has its own org structure, their own processes, tech stack, and supply chain. And they cannot buy off-the-shelf products. They buy solutions. That is, they buy installation services, onboarding services, transition services, custom development. They buy trust, support, along with the product. So they really buy a solution. In essence, the enterprise customers, for the enterprise customers, solutions are launched into the market, not products. And very small features can be very valuable because they complete a solution, right? All right, let's take a look at an example that Pratik shared earlier. So we've got our B2C product, B2C services. Let's get in the B2B product or services below these giants. As you can see, the B2B transactions are low volume and high ticket size. So usually there's a direct contract between the OEM of the product and the consuming business. In case of B2C, the matchmaking activities scale by the number of transactions, and hence B2C products are able to create marketplaces and replace B2C services that are matchmaking. Now, before we get into the launch framework, let's quickly take a poll. Yeah, so I'm sure some of you are trying to kind of launch a product or you've already done it. Based on what we've discussed so far, which category do you think your product belongs to? And yeah, those who don't know, just mark the option, I don't know. And in the meanwhile, you can tell me how many polls do you see on the screen? And you can type your answers in the chat box. We'll just wait for Rishi to bring back the results of the poll. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to take a look at the chat. Okay, people are seeing 5 polls, 3 polls, 5 options. Somebody saw 2 polls.
All right, I think we are at 97%.
Okay, Amit just saw 1. All right. Oh, a number of you have enterprise clients, 54%. Cool. Some of you are also working with mid-market. Awesome. All right. So people who are dealing with enterprise clients, what I'm about to talk applies more to you. Mid-market somewhat applies. Small businesses and consumer businesses, what I'm about to say does not really apply to you. But yeah, feel free to listen through the story. Thank you. All right. Anybody wants to guess? So what, like, can you just type in the chat? What are the polls that you saw? North South Pole. Okay. What else? No other polls. The actual pole. Okay. North South and pole vault. Yes. Jumping pole. Okay. All right. So I'll just close it out. The one pole that we're all missing is the background of the text, which is also a pole, a geographic pole. It's a snapshot of the geographic pole. Anyways, let's just continue. All right. Now let's look at the launch. Let's try to apply it for B2B enterprise. Like I said, I'm going to be focused on enterprise a lot more. And to do that, let's first introduce the missing piece, which is the discovery piece. Now, in this framework, the first difference that comes for enterprise is that launch planning starts from the problem discovery phase, and you should keep track of the source of the problem. Did you hear it from prospects, sales teams, customers, customer success team, maybe integration partners, or even marketing team? Identify who is reporting the problem and who do they report is facing the problem, right? And that will help you, fill up the rest of the framework pretty well. To identify the problem, feature, and benefits, ask those basic questions. Who's the decision maker? Who pays? Who stands to benefit or lose? Who will experience the features? Who can veto them and why, right? And when it comes to monetization, that's really a bit tricky in enterprise. First of all, when you're dealing with a giant Fortune 100 customer, your packaging schemes are thrown out of the window during the sales cycle. Essentially, each customer is really buying a custom contract where they kind of bought a unique solution powered by a set of features of their choice, right? For such customers, you need to take the launch decision on a case-by-case basis. Unless the feature specifically targets them, launch it for them later. For relatively smaller enterprise customers and mid-market corporates, your customers are likely to be on a package. And in this case, the launch decision involves identifying which packages will include the new feature being launched, right? And when it comes to the market piece, instead of demand and supply, which are kind of more common in B2C marketplaces, there are new aspects for enterprise products. The first one is having an ideal customer profile. In essence, you must identify which businesses are facing the problem, which teams or departments are impacted, which personas and executives care about the impact of the problem, right? Another market element to study is partnerships. Partners could be internal service providers, external service providers, integrated products. And the last element is competitors. And quite honestly, you're just basically identifying whether what you're launching in the market, is it a parity to competitors or is it a differentiator to those competitors? And this will help you enable sales teams with battle cards and landmines, right? Now, if you're launching new features for an existing solution in terms of strategy and channel, just follow the same GTM strategy for new features as the existing solution. But if you're launching a new solution to the market, there are three possibilities. One is you know the category. This means that you know the persona and the persona is aware of the problem. Two, you know the persona and the problem, but the persona is not aware of the problem, right? And three, you know the problem, but you don't know which persona does this problem belong to. For each of them, there's a different strategy. If the category is known, you need to make them aware of your presence and differentiation. So essentially, a lot of the focus will be on pull. And of course, the more enterprisey the product, you'll still have to push it. But for the less enterprisey products, you can still work with pull, and maybe for SMB, you can directly focus a lot on pull because the category is known, right? For mid-market, you can kind of use a mix of pull and push. If you notice, Slack has gone a route where they do both pull and push for category because one, they have a community-focused product, and by creating a pull, they are able to shorten their sales cycle, but they still need a sales cycle in the enterprise customers. The second scenario is persona, where the persona is known. This is a bit hard work because the persona is not aware of the problem. So you would dominantly focus a lot on push. You would try to make sure that the persona is understanding the value of the problem, right? So you can try by starting to bundle with services or bundle with some external partners, because people realize that the solution works for them when it comes through them through a channel. If that's not really the option, then you can go ahead and try to go to market by cultivating a community around that persona, championing their cause, evangelizing them around the problem, and helping them, most important part for enterprise, helping them build a case on the impact of the problem on the organization, right? And the third piece is if only the problem is known, then basically that's really difficult. You have an uphill task of the highest level of difficulty, right? It's category creation outright. For example, I was once working on a side project to make meetings more effective. The problem is known to everyone, but which persona or ICP, ideal customer profile, does this belong to? God knows who does it belong to. So from that, I learned, don't launch such projects out aloud, right? Try driving adoption through secondary sale via an in-product upgrade if you are into SMB, or if you are into enterprise segment, try land and expand tactics instead of going for an outright sale. Basically, whenever you're creating a new category with a product, which is essentially the case with persona and problem scenarios, then there's a huge customer education and market formation cost involved. And yeah, be mindful of that. And the last piece, which is around matrix. I'm just simplifying matrix a lot here. Of course, this is a huge domain in itself. But from a launch perspective, enterprise launch perspective, matrix can be in these three categories. Acquisition, which is, for example, if the source of problem discovery was sales, then your acquisition matrix could be new revenue or new logo. If the discovery source was, let's say, tech support or customer success, then you're probably looking at metrics such as NPS, CSAT, or negative reviews on G2 Crowd or wherever. And if the source was customer success, you probably want something like a referral metric to be in place. For example, how many times are you getting upsells or cross sells? Are customers giving you references to get more customers? When a persona leaves their job, gets into another job, do they get you an adoption into the new organization? So there are other metrics which are kind of corresponding to others, others internal stakeholders, tech debt and whatnot. I'm not covering them because whatever projects you do there, they may not really be relevant for a launch into the market. All right, I'm going to spend very little time on this. This is a bit tactical in nature. It's like a checklist for enterprise product launches. Until the last slide, we were talking about the framework, which is more strategy, and this is more of the execution. What are the other, what are the all different stakeholders that you talk to? What subjects do you talk to them? Not everything will apply to your case, but this is a good checklist to see if you're missing anything, right? You can take a screenshot. I'm going to move on to the next slide. There's too much packed on this one. All right. Okay. So before we get into the examples, perhaps we can take a pause and look at some questions that have come. Okay.
Hey, Arun, can you please go back to the previous slide just for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
The matrix one. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
No. After that. Yeah, this one, launch checklist. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So somebody had asked, what is ICP? Somebody answered, ideal customer profile. So ICP is really the kind of organizations that you're dealing or targeting. I'll cover it more in the examples that are coming up.
But does it really stands for in ideal customer profile, or in the context of the enterprise B2B, it means something else?
I think it applies to enterprise as well. The way I've thought about, I'll be sharing more in the examples. When I say ideal customer profile, many a times your entire customer base is not really eligible for a launch, or sometimes you are really expanding your customer base and getting into a new customer profile segment. Let me just go cover more on the in the examples.
Arun, one quick question. So for example, it's a B2B product in which we are sending, imagine it's a data product. We are sending data to the client, and client is using that data to derive further values out of it. Right now, in such a case, how can we track, what would be effective metrics to say that the client is really loving the product?
I would go back and start from the problem discovery. How did you discover the problem, and what was the problem you discovered?
So the problem
Right.
is.
So I'm really sorry, Nikhil. We are kind of already running out of time. Probably we can. Is it okay, Arun? We take questions at the end, like
Sure.
because there is. I mean, we need to break out for the workshop as well. So I'm so sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
All right, let's just quickly go through these examples. Hopefully some answers will be in the examples as well. All right, so I'm going to take a couple of examples, one in product expansion, the other one is in product consolidations. Just to set some context, this first example that I'm taking is from Mindtickle. It's an online training, and traditional classroom training is called ILT, instructor-led training, right? And some enterprise businesses which are in non-tech industry, for example, companies like Harley Davidson, they love the old school way of traditional training. So they do a lot of ILTs, right? Mindtickle has had a lot of focus on the online training. We believe that's the future. Now, what happened was that during this pandemic, classrooms were not possible anymore. So there was a sudden wave of prospects and customers who were scouting for alternatives. We discovered this problem from our prospect conversations for people who are looking continuing their onboarding, virtual ILT solutions. And some of the customers that we had who were using ILT module from Mindtickle, they were suddenly unhappy about it because it was not really functioning very well for the online mode on these VCs. So basically, to enable this virtual onboarding, in the middle of the pandemic, we built a set of features to run ILT on video calls. For example, a feature to automate attendance via QR code on a video call, right? So far in this story, I've kind of already mentioned a lot of things. I mentioned how did we discover the problem, what were the sources, who were the personas involved, what's the ICP, and in this case, ICP here is non-tech businesses who have relied on offline instructor-led. Such businesses are typically large companies in traditional sectors. So for example, automobile sectors, heavy industry, those are the kind of customers. And that's where the ICP is. And that is definitely slightly different from the traditional customer base for Mindtickle. So are you guys able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So yeah, let me just go out and fill in the other pieces of the puzzle of the framework here. Benefits of helping them resume onboarding in the middle of the pandemic. What we also did innovative was in the packaging space, right? So what we did was we introduced a COVID special package, which is a high scale low price, limited time edition for enterprise customers. What this does is it gets us a foot in the door for these customers who are, if you look at it from a customer lifecycle perspective, they are laggards. But right now, they're not laggards anymore. Right now, COVID has given a shock, and we can get our faces in front of them right now. For existing customers with ILT, we made no extra charge for VILT and introduced a new solution to the market, virtual ILT, just by building a very small set of features built in just 1 month. So that was packaging. Then in the strategy and channel space, what we did was we took the existing non-tech customers, we upsold to them through our CSMs and got case studies of the story of success in the middle of COVID pandemic. And we pushed those case studies from sales and leverage them and leverage those customer references, mainly driving the push. There was a minor pull effort, which was basically we changed our market positioning on the website, getting ourselves COVID ready, and we did a PR, but that was very less effort. Like we are completely enterprise focused, so we do very less of pull, a lot of push. In terms of metrics, no value metric, but we did mark new logos being acquired by the COVID package. Revenue is not what we were targeting. So the price was low because we wanted the introductions first. And we also tracked adoption of the VILT. ILT is a product that had limited success, but with VILT, it got really off the ground, right? And there is a learning in this example, which is you can launch an existing product any number of times, right? You can make small feature improvements and then launch it as a new solution for a new market or for a new market positioning or for a new persona, for a new problem. You can launch a product any number of times. In the enterprise space, it's pretty common and it is pretty okay to deliver value in that way. Right. Now moving on to the second example, which is around the product consolidation. This is about a UI revamp of user management, which is kind of pretty common user management module in many B2B products. If you're working on an enterprise product, typically over the years, there comes a time when you have to kind of revamp and rebuild the existing product. So this was one of those scenarios. The example, in this was we discovered the problem from our customer success managers. They told us that the enablement admins, were kind of noticing that the UX is a bit clunky. It's inconsistent with the rest of the platform, which is modern, and it's a bit inefficient for enterprise. And so this is, all that is covered by ICP, source, problem, and persona, right? And so we built a new UI that was optimized for enterprise workflows, and separation of concerns with a modern UX, which was consistent with the rest of the platform, saves people time and headcount. So our NPS was something that we were kind of tracking to make sure that we understand that this is going up, churn risk is going down, negative public reviews are going down, right? So this captures our solution, benefits, metrics. Now in this example, I want to highlight the launch strategy that we used, which was a 3-phase launch strategy. This is something that is commonly used in many of our enterprise launches as well. It was in 3 phases. The first phase was a controlled beta. Controlled beta is when we don't do any marketing, nothing at all. Not even our entire customer base knows about it. We educate our customer facing teams about the features. We choose a very few happy customers for beta launch, gave them the flexibility to go back to old UI, provided if they give us feedback and within the product. And this gave us a couple of months to iterate towards a stable and happy product. And so this was the first phase, which was about a very few happy beta customers, where we can take that risk and not lose the customer. Phase 2 was an opt-in. Opt-in means the customer gets to switch to the new UI on the UI itself. This was something that ran for 6 months. And as we built more benefits and advantages on the new UI, people gradually moved from old UI. And of course, our customer success managers had done a really good job of promoting it and introducing the customers through it, hand-holding them to the new UI. And majority of our customer base opted in during this phase. And they opted in happily and voluntarily. That's the key part. It's very difficult to force an enterprise customer to move on from one version of your product to the next, especially because you're changing the way some features behave and some features are getting deprecated. And then the last phase, which was about sensitive customers, right? We gave them a 1-month ultimatum by this phase. At this point, we knew that the new product is 100% stable and way more superior in terms of functionality and benefits. And so, it was okay to switch, put people onto the new UI, give them an option to opt out, but we found nobody opted out, which was kind of how we concluded that this was a successful launch, right? So, and at this stage, we kind of changed all the defaults, updated all the sales collaterals, documentation, the whole laundry list that I kind of mentioned in the checklist as well. So yeah, that's it. Those were the two examples. And yeah, before I wrap up, please notice that in both examples, I skipped a few boxes on the framework. And that is because the framework is only for guidance. Some of the boxes will not apply to your product launch, and that's okay too. All right, so yeah, thank you for being awesome and amazing audience and listening patiently. Once again, thank you all for taking out time, and thank you organizers for inviting me to talk today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arun.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Pratik. So, Rishi, do we have any questions? Pratik, Arun, do you want to take a couple of questions, considering we already over time by like 30 minutes, but 15 to 30 minutes. But if you want to take a couple of questions, like 5 minutes more and answer those, that would be great.
If it's okay, I can continue with my previous question that I was discussing about data product.
Yes, Nikhil, got it.
Yes, thank you for that. So, Arun, you wanted to know more about the product. So it's kind of a product that generates data, and the client uses that data to further take decisions. Right now, we don't know what decisions exactly client takes, right? But yes, our aim is that the client should be every time taking the data from us now, and we have a yearly licensing cycle. But if I want to do a dipstick test during my annual review, before my annual review, how can I understand if the client is satisfied or it is going in the right direction, right? Because there are more competitors available. So how can I get that feeling? What will be the metrics that I should use and should share to my directors and all?
So this client, okay, one of the industry standard ways is to just go for NPS. In terms of enterprise customers, you also be mindful who's filling up the NPS. So once you get the NPS results, you should try to look at them on a persona basis. That's the generic answer, without me knowing as to what the problem was when you were solving and who the source of the problem was that you were solving for when you were launching the product. But the generic answer, NPS does give you a good yardstick. It's considered a really good, reliable metric. Do it persona-wise, it would be really insightful.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
One of the questions which I see a couple of or a few members have asked is about the pricing strategy. Would you like to talk a little more about that, Arun and Pratik, like a minute each? And
Arun, you can pick it up for B2B.
Can you give me more context? I'm really sorry. B2B really doesn't work without context.
So let me, if we have the question. Right, so any examples or points for the pricing strategy? That was one. And then Karthik also asked somewhere in the middle, like, can we talk more about the pricing strategy, which is specifically used when you start launching a product? So what kind of monetization and pricing strategy that you would think of?
Yeah, and more so from a B2B standpoint, especially I am working on an OEM reselling, and the product is more of an on-prem and transitioning over to SaaS. So we had to do a lot of pricing changes. Just wanted to understand some of the points on that. I mean, that's the context that I have asked this question.
Okay. Okay. So just at the outset, and all of the questions that are about B2B, perhaps we can connect like offline as well to discuss more from a context. But just point blank from a pricing strategy standpoint, pricing is really a process. So what you basically need to identify is how do you define the price point and the pricing model for yourself. When you're going to an enterprise customer, uh, all of the packaging and pricing that you will go to them with, they will throw it out of the window. If you tell them you're going to charge them on a per user basis, they're going to ask you, can they get unlimited licenses, which really doesn't really make sense when you're charging them per user basis, right? All the pricing tactics that you will carry to an enterprise customer, it only sets a ballpark number at which the first counter that you will get is probably going to be at 80% discount. That's the point blank. And this is something that happens very commonly, especially because they're going to compare you to some of the other products which are not very expensive, and they already have a deal with them. Another thing that works a lot in pricing is when you're going to an enterprise customer, let's say you are selling to their India division, and they have worldwide presence. Selling to an India division will get you a low price. And the problem is that when you will go to sell in US to a US counterpart, they will still use the reference that they have as the reference, the price point that they have from India. So from a pricing standpoint, if you are able to sell to US and then come back to India, it's much easier, much safer from a pricing standpoint. But if you sell to Indian counterparts first and then go global, it's really difficult. And for some reason, the same companies who are selling at two different price points will still not, as a customer, will still not agree to, raising the price point when you're selling to a global counterpart as compared to India. I can keep going, but let's just stop there. If we can talk more from the context of what you're going through, probably separately. Is that okay?
Yes, Arun. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
All right, Rishi, Bansi, are there any more questions or we break out for the workshop?
I think Pratik have already answered the questions which were pending earlier in the chat. And I think like looking at time, it's 11:50 right now.
Yeah.
We can go ahead for the workshop.
Excellent.
And definitely there are Twitter handles and LinkedIn profiles shared of Pratik and Arun, and people can reach out. Because something would be very specific and something would be generic, right? Like this is just an open thing. Like you can reach out for it. That's the beauty. So next thing is we do have the breakout rooms. So we have named that as Pune, Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. Like we couldn't come up with a very like non-generic names in this. So like you would be placed in that. You would have one moderator each. Some of you would be like Abhijeet, Satya, Pratik, and Arun. So like these will be the moderators in your group, and they'll tell you how to run the workshop. So we'll have a 15 minutes of time to run this workshop, and then if time permits, we'll play that back to the rest of audience. Like we'll just pick two groups. So this will give you a fair understanding of the framework which Pratik and Arun talked about. Just like scratch the surface, and then you can take it further, right? So like yeah. So I'll just allocate you to these groups, and you'll. This will be a breakout in separate rooms. All right.
Sure, Rishikesh. Let's go.
Just a second, like about the Weaver. So I've given the link to everyone here. So Amit Goodbury, do you want to talk about it, about the Weaver? Just for a minute, yeah.
Yeah, Weaver is a cool and exciting startup, a place for all your content and a place for the community. It started by a friend of mine, and you can create newsletters within a minute. You can get people who are in marketing understand about a report called Voice of the Customer report. Weaver gives that report. It's something like Mixpanel or Clever Tap. signals. So do join the channel. Do join Weaver. I've given the link. There are also they've sponsored, and there are also prizes that they would give to some of the lucky winners. So yeah, there are Amazon vouchers to be won. So please join and enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit. And the link has been put in the chat. So whoever wants to interested, just copy it from there and go for it. Thank you. So Rishi, can we now
Yeah,
get into the...
I just open the rooms and it will end after 15 minutes exact. I've set a timer.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. We are back.
Wow.
How was it?
How short it is, right?
Yeah.
It's so short.
It is power pack. It is good.
It felt like it was
enjoyed
like just 2 minutes we started and everything ended.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we would have given like 15-20 minutes more, the condition would have been
absolutely.
Yes.
But then there is a time crunch.
No, we had Anant. Anant was good in our and Vishal was there in our team who was good. He did nice. Yeah, it was.
We almost completed the Amit. We almost completed the strategy at least with 1 or 2 pointers, right, and the framework parts.
How was it for?
We can unmute and talk because like there are no presentations right now and share their experience.
But I think we can share the experience as you said, Rishi. So yeah.
Yeah. Or if there are any couple of questions which are not answered, we can still take those.
We've got
more of a time in evaluating the exact problem statement and coming up with it.
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, we lost you in between.
It's not more of question, but it's more of learning from the current activity. We spent more time in correctly formulating the problem statement.
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that it's going to happen when you start off. Like I have been like, if you give me any business, for example, right, and you tell me to articulate that, I'll probably be able to fill this in the next 20-25 minutes because I've been doing this for donkey years now. But once you start it off and you try filling it, right? So the amazing part of this framework is that you can put any business inside it and you can formulate it. And this is where first you start with something that's more relevant to you, something that you're working on, and then you start progressing towards other businesses. And then you see, like I said, if you were to do a YouTube music launch, what is it that you're going to do? If you're going to do some other business launch, what is it that you're going to do? And in the beginning, it's going to take you a lot of time to figure that out. Maybe, a couple of hours, you'll get frustrated, but that's where you'll get used to this thought process. It just helps you give you more clarity from a 30,000 feet view. And then you can kind of go on a more microscopic level and break it down into these smaller other frameworks that everyone uses, right? So for example, you have your prioritization frameworks, you have your pricing frameworks. So all your other frameworks will sit inside it, but this is to just give you the 30,000 plain view.
Yeah, so it's a good template, I guess. So
what I liked about it was a very structured approach. Typically, and I had been researching on how to do product launches before. We would have somebody in marketing who had this years of experience telling what to do next, and we all would follow. But this template kind of replaces that, and if not a replacement for an experience, but at least a good place to start. You know what are the blanks you need to fill in, and it's a good enough plan for anyone who wants to launch a product.
I think, Amit, even for the enterprise solutions, right? I had so many questions for Arun. When you said about Fortune 500 companies, right? They need solutions, they need services than the products, right? How do you even know that those big companies need something? How do you even know that, okay, we have a product, let's say, which we are selling anyways to some customers. And we also see that big companies align somehow with us, but we just don't know if that is a problem that they have, or they have already created an internal solution for it. This is something so hard to know from outside, right? How do you approach that? How do you even approach a bigger company like that, like Amazon, or let's say Facebook, for example? Yeah. You're on mute. You're on mute.
By any chance, did you attend the previous talk that I had on Product Tank? It was about this subject of going up market. So the problem typically exists in some shape or form, unless the strategy of the enterprise eliminates the problem altogether. For example, some enterprise companies might completely outsource or change over. So for example, you are a solution that helps run distribution network for an FMCG business. And an FMCG business can completely get rid of their distribution network by going 100% online. So unless there's a strategic decision like this that completely eliminates the problem of managing distribution networks, then unless that happens, you typically have that problem in some shape and form in enterprise. And the advantage or the pro and con of an enterprise customer is enterprise customers are slow to change. So it's difficult to sell into an enterprise customer. But if you are able to do that, then you are able to retain the customer for a longer period of time. Uh, the obvious next question is how do you then get a foothold into the enterprise customer? There are a couple of ways of doing that. One is the point solution strategy, which means there is a new change in the market, and the enterprise customer has been using an incumbent player. Because the incumbent player is a larger company than you are, then in that case, the incumbent player does not have a solution to the new shiny problem in the market. And so you can and you should try to figure out a way of coexisting with an incumbent player in the enterprise ecosystem, selling them a point solution that gets you a foothold into the enterprise customer, and then use the land and expand strategy. If you want to do this at scale, then one of the other ways of doing that is go to a customer that is mid-market, which is growing really fast, sell into that customer when they are mid-market, then hope they'll grow fast and they become an enterprise customer. Once they do, they will continue to narrate to you the change in problem statement that they have. They will also have a change in personas that you need to learn about. So that kind of feeds into your product management cycle. You learn more about how the customer is transitioning, how the separation of concerns is transitioning. And so you're able to build a product that is enterprise ready, and also build a sales machine that is enterprise ready, because you now have references from those new enterprise customers that you can leverage while selling to other enterprise customers. Mainstream markets believe a lot in references.
You guys, before I'm seeing people dropping off. Thanks, Arun. I just wanted to launch a poll before everybody else drop off, and we conduct the rest of the day. I'm just how did you feel about this session? I know it's online, it's not physical the way it used to be, and it's not simple to socialize on the platforms like this. But how do you feel about it? It would be amazing to know.
All right. So while people are kind of filling in their poll.
Hey, I think Girish asked a question, something very for enterprise or big organizations. Did we get to it? How do we launch products internally for internal customers, internal users? So, and since I know Girish, he's from Principal. So yeah, can somebody take and help answer him? When you have various departments within an organization.
Is it for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take it, Arun. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the launch strategy that I'd shown earlier, where we had a beta customer phase, typically the internal customers or internal teams are way more forgiving and easier to launch to, and they give you feedback a lot and very openly and frankly. And it is also easy for you to reach out to them to get feedback, really drive it out of them, get them into the interview mode. And so in the beta phase, when you're launching a product initially, you should definitely include the internal customers in the beta launch. We have this as a regular practice in our in Mintical products as well. The poll results have come back.
Wow, so nice. People actually have this session better than coffee.
I want to read the comment of Paramedic. To hold a crowd on Saturday morning for longer than planned is an achievement. Great work on the speaker.
That was a good one.
Yeah. That's a good one. Thanks, Paramedic.
Yeah.
So then we now what do we have?
I can say that you guys are doing a really awesome job. This is a very fantastically delivered session. I myself, there's a community on Meetup with the name IoT NCR. I am one of the co-founders of that, and that is one of the Asia's second largest community. Now,
Wow.
we are, we have reached a huge number, multiple thousands, and we too are not able to deliver the session at this scale, what you have done. When I say scale, at the technological scale, you have used and abused the technology every possible way you can.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nikhil. Thanks for the comments.
Rishi is the guy.
Yeah,
Did
this is good because I think I've seen Amit from the second session of Product Tank, from the offline sessions to now online sessions. I have moved from Pune to Mumbai and I'm still in touch with this group and attending it. So I think I still find value in this one.
Excellent.
Well, you know what? There are people. There was a guy who joined in from Germany. So I don't know if he's still there, but yeah, he joined in pretty early, man. It would be morning 6 a.m. for him, probably.
And one name I forgot to mention is Asif, like whose account we are using.
Yes. I
forgot to mention. It's a premium account of Asif and we are using that. I'll say thanks to him later.
Yes, thanks from everyone here. There.
That brings us to the logical, right to the top of this session. I'd like to formally thank everyone. Thank you, Arun, Pratik, Satya, Rishi, Bansi, and of course, Amit. And thank you, all of you who invested your Saturday morning times for learning, building the product launch understanding framework. This workshop, which was done, is purely for the purpose of giving back to the product management community. And as you already know, like we at the Product Tank are committed to bring in more such events and more such workshops in the coming months for you. I would also encourage you to keep an eye on LinkedIn blogs, Product Tank page, and of course, your emails. We take, of course, some time to write and publish there about the product management ritual. So that would be really helpful to go through that. Of course, the newsletters, it's something that we are adding a lot of value through that as well. So please, and always please feel free to reach out through media channels like LinkedIn, Twitter, or by any other means if you have any questions, and also if you want to contribute. Always happy to engage with folks with that thing. So, and I think one last takeaway which we can take, like from my perspective, is like start planning the product launch activities right from the beginning. You might fall short at the start, but learn, measure, build is the best way to move forward about it. So, best wishes to all of you. Thanks once again, and just a couple of announcements that we want to make before we break out for coffee. Whoever wants to stay back can stay back. Whoever wants to enjoy their weekend with their family and friends can drop off. But we are planning our next workshop on similar fashion in the month of August. We would announce the topic and the speakers. It's work in progress. We'll do that pretty soon. On September 11, there is a very interesting fireside chat that we have been organizing at Product Tank. With Roman Pichler, who is considered to be a guru in product management and agile and scrum things. So don't miss out on that. Kindly do register and get the most help out of that. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Abhijeet.
Thank you, Abhijeet.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
People who want to stay back and discuss and ask
again.
more questions can also stay back.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I'll probably take a minute's break to get my coffee.
Yeah. Let's take a 5 minutes break.
Anybody who wants to stay back, I have a question for them. So, I mean, we all are product managers. We all want to be called as product managers. But at the end of the day, are you guys like just moving Jira stories for most part of your day?
The hard truth of life.
Amit, we should probably stop recording here.
Yeah, stop recording.
Yeah.
There will be a lot of